Okay, good evening. Good evening. We're going to try to get started here. And I just want to say welcome everybody to the meeting for the San Francisco Community Roundtable. And with that, I'm going to pass it to James for our roll call or declaration of quorum.
City and County of San Francisco Board of Supervisors. City and County of San Francisco Mayor's Office. City and County of San Francisco Airport Commission.
Here, Doug Yakel.
San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. CCAG Airport Land Use Commission. Town of Atherton. City of Belmont.
Here, Julia Mates.
City of Brisbane.
Terry O'Connell.
City of Burlingame.
Ricardo Ortiz.
City of Daly City.
Pamela DiGiovanni here.
City of Foster City.
Sanjay Gahani.
City of Half Moon Bay. Town of Hillsborough. City of Menlo Park.
Here.
City of Millbrae.
Jan Schneider here.
City of Pacifica.
Mike O'Neill.
Town of Portola Valley. City of Redwood City.
Giselle Hale.
City of San Bruno.
Good evening, everybody. Here.
City of San Carlos. City of San Mateo. City of South San Francisco. And Town of Woodside.
Tom Livermore.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. With that, we're going to go straight into Bert. Can you introduce the Fly Quiet Awards, and we could do a presentation and hand out the awards.
Thank you, sir. I'd be happy to do that. Wanted to go into just a little bit of brief history on the Fly Quiet program. We have three categories that we will be recognizing tonight for the airlines. One of them is the quietest flyer. And basically, to achieve that, we have the airlines that have flown all 4 quarters of 2018 at least 3 times. So they have to be 3 flights in each quarter, but all quarters counted. So if an airline is only there 3 quarters of the year, they are not counted. And we'll have to come back next year with a full quorum. So we have a repeat customer this year. Mr. Chairman, if you wouldn't mind coming up here, we could get you to present the award while I speak to it. I'd like to ask the representative from Air China to come forward. Do we have a representative for Air China? Okay, all of the airlines said they would be here, so I'm guessing we're missing one. Oh, I see somebody outside looking around. Nope, I don't think so. All right, so we will definitely go ahead and just speak to it. With a little luck, they may come in while we're talking. So Air China has done this 2 years in a row. This year they scored an average of 8.94 out of 10 possible points. The improvement over their net overall score last year was amazing to see. It's rare that it happens back to back. Air China has operated 1 flight with the Boeing 747-800. This is the newest and quietest model of the 4-engine wide-body aircraft. They also operate midday, which is a huge help because most of the foreign flag carriers going across the Pacific are operating later in the evening at night. And so having a midday operator is a good thing. And so we wanted to recognize them. They did well on their gap performance, even though it's not the most preferred, but that heavy of an aircraft, they do have to do it. And their top score for 3 quarters of the year and once was 2nd place. And so there's a rather amazing testament to what they did. The nearest competitor was 8.05, and that was Lufthansa, the German flag carrier. So this year is Air China, and I guess we'll have to give it to them when they're able to get here. Our second airline is the most improved, and do we have a representative from Virgin Atlantic? Okay, we have a coup going on. I guess we'll have to catch them when they show up too. Anybody notice the freeway is particularly bad coming over here? So anyway, they had a significant score improvement of 1.85 points between the first and second quarter. Overall, they did a little bit of a dip in the third quarter, and then they recovered. They did this by outscoring their nearest competing airline, which, believe it or not, was Connie Coletta Services, a late-night cargo operator, by 0.55 points, so a little over half a point. And they did it by flying the 787-900 aircraft, so converting from 747s and 777s over to the 787-900 was what gave them this edge. Virgin Atlantic is a return customer as well, with their second win in this category in 3 years. Still no representatives, okay? And for the Chairperson's Award, do we have a representative from Interjet? Awesome. At least we got one. Would you please come up? Interjet's one of the newer carriers we picked up at the beginning of last year. A Mexican carrier operating the Airbus A320 aircraft. We met with their flight crew that was doing the pre-launch briefing with us. They impressed both David Ong and myself by being the only airline to have ever taken our your Fly Quiet program and integrating it into their training materials. And so we were quite impressed with that when they came back to meet with us. They really wanted to understand it. They really wanted to understand how to improve upon it. So Captain Hernandez and First Officer Olivares, I believe it was, were the two that came to visit us, and they impressed us with their PowerPoint and the procedures briefing for their pilots. So I wanted to thank and congratulate Interjet for what they've done for the Fly Quiet program. Would you like to say anything, sir?
Yeah, but I just want to say thank you for making our lives a little better by taking care of reducing the noise. So thank you very much. Thank you. Public comment, but first I'd like to introduce Monica Chinchilla, who's here from the office. Oh, thank you, James. Once again, Monica Chinchilla, who's from the Office of Supervisor Asha Safai. Okay, thank you very much. And with that, we'll move into public comments and for non-agenda. I have Doreen Gotelli, and you did not mark whether you were here for public comment or for a specific item. Okay, Doreen, why don't we start with you? Come on up. Tell us about your shoulder.
It's on. Good. Well, good evening, Roundtable and spectators. First off, I'm still waiting to hear back from the repair retrofit contractor. I sent a couple of notifications and I haven't heard anything. They visited my neighbor across the street who couldn't wait to come over and tell me that of their findings. especially after I told him I was promised to be next, not my neighbor. I'm the one fighting for something that should have been put in long time ago. I mean, come on, people. When the airport was being developed, I'm sure there must have been somebody in the FAA that was familiar to what the surrounding homes and businesses were going to need to have safe and keep the peace. They should have taken their time to research how the planes were going to impact our lives and reinforce our investments. It should have all been so easy to build our homes with double pane windows, heavier doors, extra insulating on our attics and walls. Unfortunately, they never took us into consideration. All they wanted to do was make their millions. And I really doubt that any one of them would have bought a house under or within the flight patterns. This way they wouldn't have to deal with the noise, the vibrations, and certainly anything else that could happen. Another thing they should have made was a priority to plant lots of tall, leafy trees, because at one time, these trees would absorb a good amount of noise, not only from the planes, but the automobile traffic. But those trees have all been cut down. Instead of building more homes, they should plant a tree. After my surgery, I was bedridden for several months. And man, oh man, I couldn't get any rest. All I heard was the backlash of the planes before they were overhead, and then the whine from the engine struggling to gain altitude from the pedal to the metal. Many times I would call to complain in hopes that they would stop so I could get some sleep, but all I could get was to take another oxy and pray for the day I could come here and vent.
Thank you, Ms. Gatelli. Now I have Charlie Wemke.
My name is Charlie Wambeke, W-A-M-B-E-K-E, from San Francisco. I have a relatively short statement here. After 3 years of coming to these meetings whose name includes the word community, I speak in front of this ineffective body this evening to express the great frustration of your meek attitude and your do-nothing results that have not benefited the greater community at all. In my younger days of community activism, years of representing workers as shop steward and elected union official, I find it sickening the way you welcomed a neophyte representative of the Federal Aviation Administration last February with open arms and kind words, admonishing your committee and us residents to be respectful after their years of stonewalling us. It was sickening the way Mindy threw us a prospect of changing 2 or 3 flights per month to ease the burden of the thousands of noise and air-polluting jets over our homes. You accept the fact that the FAA speaks of indefinites and pushes responsibility to you to provide asks for solutions. You slough off the fact that the FAA representatives tell you stick is here to stay, essentially condemning us north of the airport to sentences of continuous tracks in the sky over Brisbane, Southeast San Francisco, Pacifica, and the trough through the heart of the peninsula for departing flights. You use words such as beg and ask. You accept the fact that there is a higher authority pulling the strings and that the representatives that finally showed up after months and years, yes, years, in front of you, weak and mealy-mouthed Roundtable, should have put the FAA on the hot seat instead of offering them a pillow, of begging instead of demanding, of thinking of more asks rather than pushing for changes. Stop asking and start demanding. Do not accept changes and studies that stress modernization, efficiency for airline executives and passengers. Airline travel is for the elite. 1/3 or more of the fuselage space of airliners are for the limited number of first and business class seats. The cramped balance is for the cattle car peons.
Could you please wrap it up?
I'm going to finish this. Nothing is different for the people on the ground below. The majority of us experiencing distress are average Joes and Janes. As I stated when the Select Committee first announced the SFO Roundtable, is not representative of the huge number of non-peninsula residents affected by the noise and air pollution caused by next-gen paths, and in fact, all the others affected
Okay,
by
Mr. Wemke,
next-gen.
I'm going to need you to wrap it up, please. We need to move on to the next speaker.
You know, I've been coming to these meetings for 3 years. I have 2 more paragraphs to go. In the 3 years I have attended these forums, I have found it insulting that you treat the general public like second-class citizens, that you have statements in your meeting rules that you cannot discuss or take action on any matter raised under public comments and not on the agenda. I find it difficult even to figure out how to make a comment.
Okay, sir, I really think you've gone over your time now. You can submit it in writing if you wish. Mary Jo Freeman, please.
Mary Jo Freeman from Palo Alto. I want to make 3 points on Parrot, the new oceanic arrival procedure to SFO in Auckland. Number 1, Parrot was not recommended by the Select Committee. They asked the FAA to comply with a noise abatement procedure to cross the Woodside VOR at 8,000 feet. Please read the 3 recommendations. They did not recommend creating a new OPD procedure that could be used by all carriers for SFO in Auckland oceanic arrivals. Point number 2, Parrot was not reviewed by the impacted community. Having the FAA respond partially to a few questions at some SFO roundtable meetings does not constitute a community review, especially when some impacted communities are not represented at the SFO roundtable. In their report, the Select Committee made it clear that, and I quote, when designing new procedure, the FAA must include affected communities as stakeholders, end of quote, and should be, and I quote, leading all future procedural waypoint and flight path development activities in consultations with the affected communities. Point number 3, the FAA has not provided adequate documentation on the Parrot expected impact on communities. The FAA described that Parrot will have no impact in a few paragraphs in a 3-page CADEX document that included 2 other changes. In contrast, the 2018 Phoenix CADEX is 34 pages long, plus appendices, covers an area of 30 nautical miles around the airport, and is published on an FAA Phoenix website that the FAA maintains. Since last fall, many people and bodies have asked the FAA to share the Parrot analysis results. The city of Palo Alto, where I reside, even submitted a FOIA request on October 29th. To this date, the FAA has not provided any data. I'm now going to echo Adam Schiff. You might think it's okay for the FAA to implement a new procedure that was not recommended by the Select Committee. You might think it's okay that the FAA did not involve community stakeholders when developing a new procedure. You might think it's okay for the FAA not to release their environmental data analysis. I don't.
Thank you, Ms. Freeman. I have a slip from Liz Lopez.
Hi, my name's Liz Lopez. I'm from Visitation Valley area of San Francisco. And this is an area that got affected, like Charlie said, in about 2015 with the stick departures from one left. So they come low and loud over our house, late at night, sometimes even under 3,000 feet in altitude. So we have flights from Mexico going to Guadalajara, coming over our houses all day and night. So it's pretty much nonstop. If you're going to the south, you're coming over like Visitation Valley, Little Hollywood area. And one of the things in the pipeline right now is possibly sending some of the nighttime departures over the Golden Gate Bridge so that they're not coming over our homes. And I look forward to hopefully speaking about that tonight and having the FAA answer questions about that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have next Mary Plovanich. I hope I didn't butcher that too badly.
I've not been to this community meeting before, so. I also live in San Francisco, the southeast corner, Little Hollywood, and this is the community that is really the gateway to the flight path of the stick. And we're from prior meetings, I learned from the SFO that we have, at the minimum, 350 flights per day. They come over a path that is about 3 very short blocks wide, one after another. They, at peak times, like perhaps on the weekends, there are probably 650 flights overhead. The altitude gives you the idea of more of a helicopter. So there's a constant noise. It's sort of like a battlefield sound or a accident on the freeway sound where the helicopter circles because there's one plane after another. Again, like the prior speaker said, we were told there is a plan to alter the flight path. I would hope that's happening and not just for the night. The flights start about 5:30 in the morning and they go until 2:30 at night with very loud, low selection of planes from 11 o'clock until about 1 o'clock. I would say there's probably a dozen planes that go over, extremely low. I'm curious about the relationship between the FAA and the airlines. I feel that we are probably suffering because of the need to have fuels, less fuel used.
Thank you, Ms. Plavanic. Your time is up, so you might have an opportunity later on the specific items to come back up and finish your thought.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, is there any other member of the public that wishes to speak on a non-agenda item? Please step forward.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak. My name is Peter Grace. I come from Brisbane. One thing I think that would help with this frustration here is a presentation on who has authority over what. Who does the Roundtable really have influence on? As far as I can see, it's the airport. And I think a presentation describing that would at least diffuse some of this anger that we're seeing at the moment and misunderstanding of what's happening. That's not my point. I do want to say that I think that while we have a noise, backblast subcommittee, we also need one on departure aircraft. I'm in Brisbane, and we're also affected in Brisbane as well, with multiple aircraft coming over one after another at different times of day. I can give you quotes about that. At the last meeting, there was a presentation given by Bert Ganung on Title 21, where he specified what the responsibilities of the county were: review and audit airports monitoring data, submit quarterly reports to Caltrans Department of Aeronautics, Transportation Aeronautics, and enforce noise standards. Can we have an update on what's happening there? And finally, the FAA Reauthorization Bill of 2018. There are multiple sections that deal with noise. Is it possible to have an update on what's happened on the standards on that? For instance, Section 179, there's an airport noise mitigation and safety study. Within 1 year, initiate review of studies relationship between approach and takeoff speeds and corresponding noise impacts on communities surrounding the airport. That's us. I think it would be worthwhile trying to bring us in to understand here as a body what is being done and how it affects us. Secondly, there's a position of the regional ombudsman. Can we find out what his authority and responsibilities are? And thirdly, and this is really important, within 180 days after the enactment of the Act, enter into agreement with an eligible institution of higher education to conduct a study of the health impacts of noise from aircraft flights on residents exposed to a range of noise levels from such flights. One of the areas mentioned is the California Metroplex, and it's looking at incremental effects below 10,000 feet.
Okay.
Could you tell us where what it stands on the process and give us feedback on that, as to what's happening, and have this as a recurring item?
Thank you for your comments, and these are non-agenda items, so we're not able to respond, but If you want to, I would really like to have you submit those in writing. I think there's some very valuable information there that we can probably respond to that. Thank you. I had one more speaker. Go ahead, please. Two more speakers.
At the the new roundtable for Santa Clara and Santa Cruz counties, we heard a presentation from the FAA that talked about their experience with successful roundtables around the region. And one of the things that they presented on a slide was that successful roundtables include a list of maybe 6 or 8 stakeholders, one of which was the airlines. And I haven't seen airline participation here very often. I certainly haven't seen regular participation. And I think that's highlighted tonight by the fact that we don't even have 2 of the people that said they would, 2 of the airlines that said they would attend to pick up an award. I think the airline participation really is important because as we are learning, even the FAA doesn't have the power to compel things like vortex generators. That's certainly a serious oversight in the laws that Congress had passed governing the FAA, but it is something that Bert and his team are working with airlines on, and I think that if we could humanize the face of people who are suffering to people from the airlines who are making these decisions, it might make it a little easier for them to carry to their superiors and the CFOs the idea that maybe investing $3,000 per airplane to retrofit, to fix a problem that is a design bug, is actually a pretty good investment, not only for the community, but in public relationship, and it's just the right thing to do, for heaven's sakes. So bringing the airlines into here, into this forum, I think is something that would be worth giving some consideration to. How could we encourage them to come? What contacts could we make, maybe through our congressional offices, to facilitate that and try and encourage regular participation? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. And there was one other person who wanted to speak. Please step forward.
Thank you. My name is Emily Faxon. I live in the southwest corner of San Francisco, and I'm new to this conversation because I haven't been bothered by the noise, but definitely am bothered by the noise as of early March. Planes flying low over the house, looking out the kitchen window and seeing a large jet like right there. Someone described it as sort of helicopter altitude, and I would agree with that. It just, all of a sudden things seem to have changed in what was formerly always quiet neighborhood. I've lived there since 1992, and it's just suddenly quite different. I sent a noise complaint to SFO and got a seemingly very thorough response from a Ms. Annalise Tang, and she sent me a map of San Francisco with the flight path from SFO, making a large U right over my house, and a bunch of them, and she explained, oh, this is just because of the weather at SFO, and that seemed disingenuous because, come on, I mean, the weather doesn't change once every 25 years. So I feel like tonight there's this sense that the transparency is one way, that the people who are coming here to talk about the pain of having our lives intruded on by this noise. We're being honest with you about what's happening, and I feel like SFO needs to be more transparent about why this is happening, and I like the suggestion of the airlines being part of the discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Faxon. So any other public comments? With that, we'll close the public comment hearing, and we move on to our consent agenda. And just a clarification, Mr. Grace, your public comment is for item number 5. Are you asking to pull that from the consent agenda? Item number 5 is the airport director's reports for January, February of 2019. Very good. Okay, so we will pull item number 5 from the consent agenda. Any other members that want to pull in any items? The only one left is 4. So any members of the public that wish to pull number 4? Having none, we'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
And we have a motion and a second. All in favor? So we've approved the consent agenda, and we move on to the airport director reports for January and February 2019. Mr. Graves, would you like to step up and give us your comments on those?
My name is Peter Grace. I'm in Brisbane. These are comments about the noise monitoring the temporary noise monitoring that's done, and particularly in the Brisbane, South San Francisco area. And that is, the report only recounts the number of planes from SFO. In Brisbane, we are subject also to noise from planes from Oakland. I got one at 1:10 this morning. So can the director's report on the airports for the noise monitoring study include flights from Oakland as well?
Sounds good. Bert, would you want to respond to that? Thank you, Mr. Grace.
Well, first of all, the airport director's reports are different from the quarterly noise monitoring reports, which is what he's referring to. The information that we try and report on is the SFO influence, but we also say in there we report on other aircraft. So,
Perfect, thank you. And with that, are there any other comments or questions for item number 5? And having none, I will entertain a motion to approve number 5.
So moved.
I'll second.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Excuse me,
Okay.
I'd like to ask a question.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm
Give a-
sorry, I didn't.
Yeah. Could you give a better explanation as to why we can't get the information from Oakland? Because Pacifica is also impacted by the Oakland flights. So I would like a better explanation for the public and the roundtable as to why we can't get that information.
Okay.
While
I'm gonna-
Bert's doing that, I can't see on the other side of me, who first and seconded on the send?
I seconded.
Motion made by Sandberg.
Thank you. Thank you, Judy.
Bert?
so I believe the ask is for a more definitive breakout by airport.
Well, since Pacifica, I know, and Brisbane are both affected by flights from Oakland, I think if we are dealing with noise, I think it's only fair and appropriate that we get reports from the other airports, because we can't solve a problem if we don't know where it's originating from.
Understood. I don't believe I have the report with me tonight, but I'd be happy to discuss it with you. I can pull it up. The information we have in there, we're specifically looking at SFO aircraft, other airports. So if you're asking that we take other airports and do a further delineation, we can do that.
Okay, so in the next, how often? This is only my second meeting, so this report that you're referring to comes out, what, every quarter?
It's quarterly.
Okay, so the next quarter we'd be able to get a differentiation.
What I'd like to do is talk to you and Mr. Grace to find out exactly what people want, rather than us just venturing out in the weeds, so that we can get exactly what everybody wants and put it in the right way.
Okay.
What we're trying to do is we have a standardized report format, and we try to adhere to that throughout. If we can implement it, that we can run through it continuously for all of them, we'll do it.
Okay, thank you.
And Bert, I think you have one more question. Ann, did you have a question?
This
Members?
might better fit during the agenda item for ground-based noise, but when we start working on next year's work plan, reevaluating the reports and what goes into the report could be something on our work plan. I will tell you, one of the things I'm going to encourage that we do is that we have a better way of tracking those flights that are creating ground-based noise. And maybe that's also a way that we can look at the 2 additional reports and get some, the information is probably there, but reporting it in a way that we can understand what's going on.
Great. That's a good idea. Thank you. Bert, I think that's it. And with that, again, we already voted on it, so we are moving on to a regular agenda item, and we have a discussion with the FAA regarding questions provided from the roundtable chair in an email to the FAA on February 7th, 2019. And we have...
Chair? Excuse me, through the chair.
Yes, ma'am.
We approved the motion to accept and seconded, but we didn't vote.
Oh, well, let's vote on it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sounds, any opposed? So I guess we have a unanimous decision. Thank you. Thank you, Terry. So once again, we're going to item number 6, discussion with the FAA regarding questions provided from the roundtable chair. And we have with us Raquel Gervin, Regional Administrator, and Mindy Wright. And I'm sorry, Mindy, I don't have your title in front of you, but so do you? Okay, so Mindy's going to do the presentation. Thank you. But thank you for being here, Raquel.
And while he's getting situated, I just wanted to say thank you, sir, for bringing up the fact that there are a lot more entities involved in this issue. You know, the FAA, unfortunately, is blamed a lot for noise, but our mission is safety, and so we're all in this together. So bringing in the airport and the airline stakeholders is definitely a good way to move forward. So thank you for bringing that up. All right, so we... And forgive me, I have been sick a little bit, so I have a little hoarse throat, so bear with me. I just went and pulled all the questions that the roundtable had submitted, and this particular one, I had offered a presentation for Justin and the rest of the roundtable for entry of a procedure into the gateway, step by step. I was trying to be proactive, but little did I know they were changing the gateway. So I met with Justin about an hour ago and walked him through it, and so he has the information to enter in the 085 procedure into the gateway, and I offered some of my staff just in case he has any questions moving forward with that. So this particular one we can move past since I had given Justin that information, except for this one here at the bottom. It kind of snuck in. And Ann, I know this is an important topic for you as far as the ground-based piece, but I think with that work group coming together with the airport, more questions could be answered for that. But I just didn't want anybody to think I avoided that question, because this is something that the FAA does not model, but the airport, I talked with Bert earlier today, and they'll be working with the work group that's going to be formed for that. If there aren't any questions, I'll move on to number 2.
Any questions from any members on number 1? Nope, I think we can move forward. Thank you.
And roundtable members, you will have a copy of that presentation that I give Justin. So number 2, this in short is a request for the FAA to build an overlay for the offshore conventional departure route. There were a couple different asks in here using different waypoints and such, but I'm just going to move into my graphics and then I'll be able to answer the questions. So I think there might be a misconception of the offshore versus the stick, that the offshore where the intersections are, that the aircraft actually do fly offshore. And we've been talking about just volume and how busy San Francisco is, and also the competing aircraft that come from Oakland over places like Pacifica and Brisbane and such. Those are in conflict with these aircraft that are on these procedures. So I think a picture says 1,000 words, so I'm going to go into some graphics. We pulled some graphics, historic tracks from 2014, and I do apologize for it being a little bit hard for you all to read, but this is the port SID. The stick replaced the port, so these are tracks from August of 2014. As you can see, the aircraft fly over the peninsula, they make their left turn, and then go on their route. Some make it over the water, some don't. This is the offshore, similar story, a little bit tighter, but similar story. We put some of the waypoints on there, so waypoints are intersections, just so, because a lot of people are familiar with where WAMI and port and such, so it's not necessarily for one procedure, just so you all can see where those points in space are. So here we are in 2018, so this is the offshore. We did not get rid of the offshore, we still have it, it's still flown today. So as you can see on the aircraft, they go over the peninsula, and this is true too for the stick. So the offshore and the stick are very similar with what they do. This is partly, actually mainly, because of the volume of traffic at San Francisco and where they fit with the traffic from Oakland. And we have heard from the Roundtable members and also the communities that they want the aircraft to go over the water, and we do understand that. But publishing an RNAV overlay of the offshore won't get you there, because it will be flown the same way that it's flown today, just because of pure volume. So the FAA is not in support of designing a procedure that we clearly won't use, just based on this is what's happening. These are tracks from August 2018. You can see the interaction between Oakland, the stick, and the offshore departures. Like I said, NCT, I work very closely with that facility. They are aware that the residents want the aircraft over the water, but sometimes we just can't. I mean, the volume is just too great at times, and how they mix in with the Oakland departures. We're a safety organization, and like we had said before, there are multiple stakeholders in this, and we're just one of the proponents here, and we just try to have a safe operation. So with that said, we're not in favor of publishing an overlay for the offshore departure. Any questions on that?
Mindy, do you mind if we ask you a question? And again, this is something we've discussed in the past, but the question is, why can't they fly out further out on the ocean to make room for the traffic you're describing?
So it puts them in conflict, because when you fly, let me see if I can figure this out. Okay, when the Oakland departures fly over the peninsula, and if you allow the aircraft from San Francisco to fly further out, that creates a confliction point. And so depending on where these conflict over here, and then if you have another aircraft departing here, it creates a very unsafe situation. And it's based on volume. It's not that they don't want to, and I understand the challenge, but it's just, based on what air traffic says in historic tracks, you can see when you go back to 2014, and we could pull tracks all the way back, in time. It's always been like this. They've never gone over the water, and it's just they try. I mean, they really do. They know that the residents don't want them over the land as much, but with the volume, we don't have a choice.
But, and again, there was some restriction about them going further out because if you could move the whole bunch further out in the water, then you could take them all out. But there was some restriction out in the ocean there.
Yeah, I had the previous meeting. I gave you the graphics for the warning areas out there. I didn't include them on there for the sake of time, but you all have that. You're welcome to ask it a few more questions at a later meeting, or just have Justin send me a question. That'd be fine.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Mindy. Any other questions? Go ahead.
So we're looking at 30 days, 24 hours, what is that snapshot?
It's the entire month.
It's the entire month?
Yes.
So if there was a way of changing if everybody wanted to leave at 5 o'clock at night, then you're going to have conflicted airspace. If we had certain flights that are flying that certain pattern, and we had the power to spread them out over more time, would there be more flights that could go out over the ocean? And do we have the data that can show that?
We don't have the data that can show that, but logic would say yes, you'd have more space. But that's not a call for the FAA. That would be a call for the airport and the airlines.
I understand, and to me, one of the problems of the FAA is you're concerned about safety, it's your number one, but you're only concerned about one aspect of safety. And the aspect of safety is in flight. It's not anything else. And any of us who work in the environmental field, we have our specialty area, but we have the greater good. And the greater good is to look at safety in all aspects. It's not just driving a car down the freeway. It's the lead from the gasoline. It's the asbestos from the brakes. It's everything together we have to look at. And to me, maybe we don't have the power here, and it's not an airport issue, but long-term advocacy, that's our goal.
And we understand that. I mean, and I'm not arguing against that at all. And again, I think to his point earlier, if we bring everybody to the table and have this discussion, it's not just an FAA thing, it's not just a residential thing, not just the airport or the airline stakeholders, it's everybody. And we have to work together to find that greater good. You know, I mean, we are trying to make the skies safe. That is what we're concerned about. And it doesn't make everybody happy, and I'm sorry it doesn't, and I'm sorry I don't have all the answers for you. But I mean, we truly do have a very safe airspace here in NorCal.
Okay, and I think, Ann, did you have a question? No. Mark, you had a question.
Yeah, I wanted to just follow Ann's initial question about the 30 days, that overlay shows 30 days worth of activity. So certainly if you look at that, we have to accept the fact that she's telling us that there's too much confliction between Oakland. But I would like to see 1 day's worth of flights to really understand if it's the same situation. And Ann, I agree with you. If you live on the land, safety-wise, it would be preferable for the aircraft to stay over the water as much as possible.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was just wondering, what are the metrics for the high volume? Like, how is it determined? Is it based on profits? How is it determined for the metrics on the volume? Like a breakdown of it?
That's a very difficult question to ask because there's a lot of metrics. I mean, from an airline perspective, from an efficiency perspective, from the FAA as far as what we can handle and how much room we have on the runway surface and also in the air. So I mean, there's a lot. I mean, we could have a more detailed discussion maybe at the technical work group, maybe to see what you're actually looking for, because that is a huge question, and I definitely don't have all the answers for that one.
I mean, I would like to see more of a breakdown. I think the colleagues here have been concerned about that, because we definitely don't want looking at the volumes and based on, like you said, the safety concerns of the FAA and the people and the other colleagues. I just don't want everything just be based on profit. So I just would like to see the breakdown of the metrics.
Yeah, just to be clear, the FAA does not profit on this. You know, we're funded by taxpayers' money. Okay, I just want to be clear.
Yeah, we know.
All right, thank you.
Member O'Neill.
Just to kind of take off on Mark's comments, this is 30 days and he wants a day. Maybe it would be good to see these graphics by the hour also, because I bet this volume could be taken and spread out more evenly over the day, so that we're not hearing this. And I just don't understand why, if the volume is there, if the volume went more towards the ocean, why can't it handle the same amount of volume? They just go out a little bit further. Can you explain that?
So I was trying to explain that. I guess I didn't do it as clear as possible. So it is a difficult concept to show, and I mean, maybe it would behoove me to bring in a video to show confliction. I did that during the select committee meeting. We had some information about the bodega, because there are a lot of concerns about the bodega arrival and not going over the peninsula and just going over the base. So we created a video to show that. But basically, as far as the traffic goes, it just really it depends when the Oakland departure comes off and when the San Francisco departure comes off and where they're at. Aircraft performance is different depending on where they're going, how heavy they are, how the winds are. I mean, it's all different, and it's always a puzzle for the controller of where they should turn the aircraft. That's why it's so dispersed over the peninsula, because it's always different. And so to pinpoint, you know, every single exact reason why the controller is turning that aircraft, I can't do that, but I can try to show you through data, maybe possibly creating a video, you know, just to show that confliction and how the controller makes that decision. Because again, I mean, like I said, I work really closely with Northern California TRACON, and they do know that, you know, that the residents want the aircraft over the water. And anytime they can, they try to put them over there, but just sometimes they can't because it's a safety situation. And as far as the times, just to touch on that, I mean, that again, we don't have everybody here to have that discussion. You know, the airline stakeholders are definitely something, and the community members, the ones that use the airport. I mean, this is a bigger discussion than just the routing, you know, because there's that demand. Nobody wants to fly out at 1 o'clock in the morning. You don't want them to fly out at 1 o'clock in the morning, so people want to fly at that 8 a.m. to, you know, 5 p.m. kind of time frame. So that's where the demand is.
Thank you. Member O'Connell.
since we have such a large conflict coming out of Oakland, wouldn't it seem that if Oakland's flights were to go out the gate, that would free up space for San Francisco flights to get out and up higher and out of the way so they can go down on the ocean side? So it seems that if we're having such a conflict between the two airports, they shouldn't be on the same, using the same flight plan, because that's putting more of the flights over one specific community, the center of the peninsula, the northern tip of the peninsula, at a lower altitude. And if Oakland could make an arc that's off from our arc, it would seem that would remove some of the conflicts.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, and this would be something for potentially the technical meeting for next month, which I was going to talk about in a couple slides, so I can address that again if you'd like.
Okay, thank
Okay, so we let Mindy go to our next question. Are you good?
Okay.
Any other questions for this one? Okay. Oh, Supervisor Pine.
Maybe it's a question for Bert. I mean, there's been a couple of suggestions that, you know, if we had, could schedule the airlines and when they arrive and depart, or when they depart in this case. And but it's my understanding that we really have no ability to do that. That the airport has no ability to do that. Or could you clarify what our abilities are to regulate when planes depart?
Under the Airport Noise Capacity Act of 1990, which is now known as Part 161, airports cannot regulate what, when, why, how an airline operates. It's purely up to the airline, and that was due to Congress.
Okay, I think I have a question over here. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things, and I appreciate the question, Supervisor Pine, and I apologize to my colleagues because this is my first meeting, but and also apologize because I'm an attorney, and I think of this from that perspective. And so when we're here tonight, one of the things I'm trying to figure out is if there is a disagreement. So like when we're on council, we're all trying to get to 3 votes, and there's advocates to get to 3 votes, and you know what the ground rules are to get to 3 votes. As I sit here tonight and we interact with the FAA and we hear public comment, what's not clear to me is if there is a disagreement, what levers do we have? And the question that what I'm trying to determine is, I know, for instance, that there are lawsuits taking place right now against the FAA in Maryland and in other places regarding noise pollution, but I don't know under this body what fact-finding would need to be done in order to go ahead and make those findings as I ask my questions this evening. I also don't know what the law is in terms to bringing those airlines. So it behooves me just to ask if it's possible, and respectfully, I'm not saying there's any. I don't know enough whether or not there's anything to be thinking of that. But I do know that when I ask my questions, I'd like them to be informed such that I'm trying to figure out how to have those facts match into the discussion. So if it's possible to have a toolkit provided to us that would say this is what the case law is under the area that we should be considering as we go ahead and ask these questions, so we're finding those facts, that'd be really beneficial, and also perhaps some understanding of what our interaction is with those airlines. Otherwise, frankly, I feel a little bit like I'm just sitting here asking questions. It's a little bit in the dark in terms of which ones, in terms of which ones, in terms of which matter.
You've assessed it very quickly for your first meeting.
Okay, thank you for the comment, and go ahead.
Mr. Chair, if I might interrupt real quick.
Yeah.
I'd like to invite you to our Noise 101 session. It's next Tuesday, April 9th, and it's very informative.
Can I answer a comment about that?
Okay.
So since we're, I'll plus one everything that Mr. Miller said, also as a new member of this body. Noise 101 is during the workday, and it's the entire day. So for those of us, most of us who work, it would be helpful, and I know other bodies provide like a deck overview to read through, so that there could be other ways that we could get that information, because there's a large lexicon in here, but there's a lot of information to digest, and I think similarly having an understanding, I think even some of the public comments echoed that sentiment that you're now hearing here
So
as
what
well.
you're requesting is a Noise 101 in writing.
We've actually posted our old one on the website.
Good, so there are resources available, and reach out and call Bert or James because again, there was so many things to learn when I first started. Mayor Medina, if you could.
Very quick, I know it's about safety, and we all would be in concurrence to that. But at the same time, is not the FAA also as far as efficiency? So the airlines, of course, wants to be the most direct, the most efficient, which again, you probably support as well. But then again, that's about profit, right? So as we all know, the airport is going to be undertaking, which I've already got my update, $7.4 billion in amenities, in other aspects. But in essence, the FAA does safety, but it's also, I'm not hearing the efficiency, which has the most direct, which actually adds potential to the noise volume. Is that correct or not?
I wouldn't say that if that the efficiency piece would add to the noise volume. It would disperse tracks, and I mean, but the thing is, you have to understand efficiency too. I mean, if efficiency could mean a shortcut for an aircraft because they're in conflict with another aircraft, and that's how air traffic looks at the efficiency piece for as sitting at the scope, and you have someone in conflict, and you look at their route of flight, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can turn them to the left, and it will get them out of conflict and on their way quicker, because controllers are like up and out. Just get them out of my airspace because it's safe, and they're out and on their way. And so I don't know if I can answer that. I mean, I don't know if it would contribute to the noise, but the efficiency piece is kind of a twofold thing for air traffic, and yeah, I mean, it does get the aircraft on its way quicker, but it also does help in the safety realm as well. Did that make sense?
It's okay for now.
Good. Okay. So, Mark, please go.
So Supervisor Pine asked the question that we need to be reminded of the answer, and that was the quick and dirty and probably correct answer. But when you look at the way the airport operates, if there are too many conflicts in the air, then that aircraft maybe doesn't take off at a point in time for safety reasons. And so there's an argument to be made that the airport does control when the aircraft gets the okay to roll down the runway and take off. Well, I guess that, thank you, Dave. Who does make that decision? Because I saw Mr. Yackel shake his head in the negative.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, I think really the movement of aircraft, both on the ground and the air, still falls within the FAA's purview. In other words, if there is excessive congestion at the end of a runway, a lot of aircraft lining up to take off, it's not the airport that tells aircraft to hold at the gate. It's the FAA that would implement a gate hold procedure. So for that reason, I would say that the on the ground as well is not an area of responsibility for the airport.
Thank you, Doug.
But I do want to throw in there too. I mean, those aircraft are there waiting to take off because it's the demand for that airport from that community, and then so we're just managing that. So I mean, there is another piece to that. I just want to make sure that you're clear on that. So again, we talk about bringing everybody together to find a mutual solution. I mean, the community is part of that, and the people, the users of the airport.
Okay, and then I'm going to try to keep it moving, so let's go to the next item, Mindy, if you would, please.
Of course. So the next item was stick, and during a few meetings ago, and then some of the reports that we put out, we had said that the stick waypoint was going to move 0.44 miles east-southeast of the current location due to criteria. I know that's a lot of information, but that's what we reported out, and it ended up that they decided, the folks in Oklahoma City, they do our designs, that the procedure didn't have to be modified. And so when I came here the last time, I said that we would shelve it because we weren't making any changes to the procedure. You all came back and in turn asked some additional questions, and so we pulled some simulation tracks to try to show the movement of the stick waypoint. So we'll go through the slides, and then if there's any questions, we'll see. So again, these are simulation tracks or routes for the existing stick waypoint. The existing stick, I'll try to hold it. is the blue, and then the new stick waypoint, the currently proposed for criteria is just southeast of that particular point. So through our simulation model here, we just we plotted a few tracks to show what the current stick procedure is supposed to look like. Well, we all know that aircraft don't turn on a dime like a Porsche, so this is what the aircraft do. So this is 1 day of tracks for May 1st, 2017. We had the data pulled, and we just did an overlay of the simulation area and the where aircraft fly with the current stick waypoint. So here is the stick procedure with the waypoint moved 0.44 miles southeast of where it currently is. So it's here. Here's the modeled flight tracks or simulated flight tracks. And then here it is with current flight tracks, just to kind of give you a perspective of where they're flying today and where this model is showing, or the simulation showing. Again, it's 1 day of data. And then we overlaid both simulations. So the blue is the current stick simulated tracks, and then the purplish magenta is the shift to the south, or the southeast. And then with the current tracks. So the ask too was for the design notes. Since we didn't make any changes, I cannot offer any design notes because we don't have any. And I do want to preface that we change criteria often, just with different different technology and different tests that we're doing. So if this procedure is modified in the future, it might not be the 0.44 east southeast. This was just at the time what the criteria was. Okay, I'll open it up for questions.
Okay, so any questions on the stick? Yes, Justin, please.
I guess my question would be, in looking at the differences between the two, what are the potential altitude differences going over land?
So our model didn't give us that, what we had used, but I would say 350 to 500 feet different. That would just a guess on my part. But that would make sense with the half mile.
Lower or higher?
It would be
higher. Higher. Because you're moving to the east. I'll show you this just so you can see, just for clarity.
Yeah, there's more time to turn.
So here's the current, and then here's the move. It's 0.44 nautical miles.
Okay, any other questions? And
So it's higher. What height are we talking about? If we're 350 to 500 feet higher, are we at 1,000 feet?
So where are you talking? Are you talking about over the land, like over Brisbane, perhaps?
Or all the way down the peninsula for all those ones that seem to be tucking in tight?
I don't have the actual altitude. I mean, we've given that information before, but I can provide it again. I think over Brisbane, they're like maybe 3,000 or 4,000. So, I mean, it would just be, 300, 500 feet above that. But, I mean, we can give you that data if you need that.
And can you provide the data so that it shows daytime, evening, and night, where they're going, if you can differentiate night from the other times of day?
Yeah, we can do that.
And hopefully you get where I'm coming from. If we can try to divert as much nighttime traffic over the ocean, because it's a lot less crowded then, so more of the flight should be able to go over the ocean or up over the Golden Gate Bridge, that would probably make at least many of us in all of our communities sleep a little bit.
So, Anne, you're stealing my thunder. It's the next item.
What? And let me just.
I mean, I have to have some good news, right?
Okay, excuse me, let me, Ann, you had a question, Ann Winger?
Just a real quick question. I'm trying to determine where that waypoint is on the coast. Is that the San Gregorio waypoint there? Mindy, where
You're
they're coming?
talking about here?
Yes, right
That's
there.
port.
That's port?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, because it's hard
You're
to
welcome.
tell from
Yeah,
here.
it's kind of hard to read when it's up there with the lighting and stuff, so I do apologize.
Great, any other questions about stick, or are we ready to move on to the fun stuff?
The grand finale.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Mindy.
Okay, I'm going to go through these. Okay, so there was an ask by the Roundtable for us to go through the next steps presentation that was given to the Roundtable back in December. But for the sake of time, I just thought I would cut to the chase. We have pulled data, and we are ready to engage with the roundtable on the night hush shift. And so that's good news. I mean, I know that there are a few people here that are really interested, and Ann just talked about that. So we'd like to participate with you all with a contingency that we have some airline stakeholders in Oakland Airport as well, because they definitely have some stake in this and provide some good information. So I just kind of captured some of the things here. We do have that data to share with you all prior to the meeting. So if we need to pull any more information, data that way, we can bring that and be ready. We'll have the correct subject matter experts here to engage with you guys. But I think it's been a long time coming, so we're super excited to start working on this project.
Yeah, that is very, very good news. And we did have a representative from Oakland here. And yeah, could you introduce yourself real quick? Great, thank you. So yeah, we heard you, and so we're hopefully getting them involved too. So thank you very much. Any questions for this? This is a biggie. Anybody have any questions? Okay, Mindy, you did such a good job and gave us such good news. We appreciate that. And so stand by, because I'm going to open it to members of the public for, and I think I have two. No, I only have one, and that is for Mr. Grace once again. Oh, I'm sorry, Kathleen. Would you like to speak now, Kathleen? That would be great. And Kathleen Wentworth with Congresswoman Jackie Spears' office. Thank you, Liz.
Okay, go back to our slide for the night. Did we lose our slide? Yeah. It's a great reminder of how great it is. We don't want to miss the good stuff. I just wanted to thank the FAA for the slide and for the decision to move forward with the night and the hush departures, southbound transition. I don't think you realize, all of you, how important this is tonight, that they are here to present this to us. And this has been, yes, a long time coming from all of us who have been working it, and I think it's going to be great. Can't wait for the next technical meeting so that we get some FAA folks here to lead us on the way. I really want to acknowledge Mindy, of course, all the time for all her efforts being here, but especially to Raquel, Ms. Gervin, who's the regional administrator. She's only been in that job for maybe 3 months, something like that. Half of it taken up with a work stoppage in the federal government. But I really have been impressed with her ability to understand the issues of importance to our people and her willingness to be, is this your third roundtable meeting, I think, Raquel? This one, yeah. It's a real commitment that she's showing in her new position, and I really have a good feeling that she's working really hard behind the scenes to make a lot of this happen for us. So I'm really optimistic about going forward. But I basically just wanted to say thank you to the FAA. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Kathleen. That was, and now we had Mr. Grace and then Liz Lopez. So, Mr. Grace, you want to step forward? Sure, Ms. Lopez, if you would.
So I also wanted to say thank you to the FAA. This is something I've been asking for a long time also, for the night hush to push through. But I also want to make sure that we realize this is only for the nighttime, I believe, and when it's possible. So I think it's from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., if I'm correct. It has to get worked out. So I just want to make it clear that that doesn't solve necessarily the problem for the entire rest of the day when people are trying to just think, concentrate, have dinner with their family, maybe sleep in till 6:30 or something. It doesn't solve the rest of the day, but it's a great step forward. But I just hope that we realize this is a beginning. It's the beginning to a conversation.
Great, thank you, Liz. Mr. Grace?
I want to say two things. I'd like to reiterate, what Kathleen Wentworth said. and also Elizabeth Lopez about the importance of the hush, the night on the hush, and also engaging with the community and looking for a technical solution that works. The FAA, thank you very, very much indeed. Thanks a lot. Secondly, I'd like to come back to something that was said a little earlier. I moved to the Bay Area in 1984, and when I used to go over the Bay Bridge, as many of you did, you paid your toll, you got in your lane, and then off you went. And sometimes it's quite nerve-wracking trying to get into the right lanes and coordinate. So what's happened is the traffic increased, traffic lights were put in, and it's enforced coordination that happens now when you go west over the Bay Bridge. So I'd like to ask the FAA, why is there not, as the numbers of flights increase and the safety concerns get worse as the flights increase, why are you not considering coordinating takeoffs between Oakland and SFO and reduce the safety concerns? And can you also comment about whether there is coordination of takeoffs between other airports in the States? I seem to have a memory that indeed there is coordination takeoffs in the New York area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Graves. Mindy, are you prepared to answer any of those questions, or do you want to we could submit them for the next time if you like? Fine, okay. Thank you. With that, any other questions from any of the members of the board? Would you like, please step forward. Monica Chinchilla.
Hello, thank you for allowing me a minute to speak. I guess I had another question for Mindy in terms of moving forward with the working group and the technical meetings. And I apologize if this was stated in previous meetings prior that I wasn't present for. But in terms of the timeline that you're anticipating this working, I guess the timeline of how long you want to convene with this working group and when they will make recommendations and when the potential implementation of the night hush will be in effect.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so there's really no clear cut because I think once everybody gets to the table and starts talking about it, because we're bringing in Oakland, we're bringing in the airlines, it's going to be a wide discussion. If they came up for a conclusion like right away, which I highly doubt, but maybe they might, we would whoever's the proponent, which would probably be a joint effort between the Oakland Airport and the San Francisco Airport to put that, or the forum and the roundtable, put that in to the IFP gateway. That's a 12 to 18-month process because it still has to go through our point 41, which is our PBN, performance-based navigation. So it has to work through that process. So so if they came up really quick, then we could go through the process fairly quickly. Once it goes into the IFP gateway, the Instrument Flight Procedures Gateway, that's our tracking mechanism. We have 30 days to look at that and validate it, which it would probably go pretty quickly. And then we have to convene an internal type work group, and that consists of some of the airline stakeholders and such. And then we move through the process. So yes, so once it becomes a project from that point, 12 to 18 months. So like I said, it's not as clear cut as it could be. Yeah, did that answer your question? Okay.
Okay, thank you again, Mindy. Any other questions before we move on? And for some of the new members, it sometimes does feel like nothing happens. This is a big deal because that is where we're actually moving the needle. May be very small, but we're actually moving the needle. And so for those of us who've been here for a while and sometimes get really frustrated because nothing changes, this is a big deal. And I just want to point out that our Congresswoman, Jackie Spear, sent a letter to the FAA that I think helped move this along. So I encourage those of you who have concerns to reach out to your representatives to Washington. So that is always very helpful. And with that, thank you, Mindy. Thank you, Raquel. I really appreciate you being here and really appreciate all the information. So with that, we will move on to item number 7, and that is Doug Yako with the San Francisco International Report.
Thank you, Chairman Ortiz. Just a couple of quick updates. Number 1, an announcement. Last month, we announced that we're planning to close one of our runways this September, runway 28 left, which is one of our primary runways for landing. We're planning to close for 20 days from September 7th to the 27th. And essentially the reason why we're doing this is a section of this runway. The runway is about 11,380 feet long. There is a 1,900-foot section that we need to work on. Essentially, we're experiencing some failures of the base below the asphalt surface. So this is something where we're going to have to remove that section, go down, build a new runway base, and repave that section. So we're allocating about 20 days in September to do this. We're doing it in September because we need dry weather, and September historically is a very dry month to do this type of work. We don't expect that the closure of this runway alone will drive any changes in how aircraft arrive or depart SFO during this period. We do expect that it will cause delays and cancellations, and we are right now working with the airlines that operate at SFO, and we're asking those airlines to look at adjusting their flight schedule during this period because our landing capacity, our runway capacity, will be reduced during that 20-day period. The other thing that I wanted to talk about real quick was the second chance and replacement noise insulation program. In our last meeting, there was an ask for a breakdown by city. We've got that on screen. I apologize if I can't read it from here, so I'm guessing you can't either, but we'll be sure to include that breakdown in the minutes. But on a high level, as of this week, we've received a total of 745 applications for replacement, and 76% of those fall within the noise exposure map. We've also received 492 applications for second chance, and 34 of those fall within the noise exposure map. So as you can see, a lot of the replacement requests are within that current contour, whereas what we're finding is a lot of the applications for second chance are not within that noise contour. We continue to visit properties as part of this process. We've visited almost 300 properties already, and we've started performing acoustical testing as well. The way we're going to proceed with this is we're going to replace and make installations in blocks of homes. We're probably going to do it rather than one at a time. We're going to accumulate about 15 to 30 eligible homes and then do the work in blocks as in that nature. The other thing that I wanted to touch on is the number of homes that we can help out with this, because I know we had some discussion about it in the last meeting, and since the last meeting we've been able to secure additional funding for this. So now we're in a place where for this first round we expect that we'll be able to treat about 180 to 200 homes. And if you'll recall in previous meetings, that number was 30. So we're significantly increasing the number of homes we're going to be able to touch on. And then the other thing I want to mention is that it's not like only those 180 to 200 homes are the ones that get treated. We're going to do this in multiple rounds, multiple phases over the course of the next several years. So really this first round I think will hit about 180 to 200 homes, but if homes are eligible and they haven't been hit in that first round, they're not out of luck. In other words, we're going to keep going. And I would remind you that the first insulation that we did lasted over 18 years. So it does take time for us to do this type of work, but I want you to know we're committed to this, and we're going to do this in multiple rounds. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay. The last I checked this, and sorry folks for talking about Millbrae, there are 3 homes in Millbrae that fall within the 65 decibel contour. And I see 26 applications, 3 that qualify. But I don't know if that 65 decibel contour took in the fact that the runways have been moved 450 feet and 250 feet closer to Millbrae, and for that matter, Burlingame. So what I'm going to be doing through the ground-based noise thing is really questioning the existing 65 decibel contour. On top of that, there are 15% of the flights that either land coming in on 1 or take off over 19. And that seems to be totally not represented at all in terms of the contours for Millbrae. And you're going to hear it in ground-based noise. I'm halfway through the EIR that was written in 2010, 2011. And it's a little bit weird. It talks about 7,000 homes, and then it talks about 30 homes, and then it says no impact. So this is where I'm coming from. I just really question the 65 decibels and which homes qualify. And the ground-based noise is not part of this formula at all. This is only in-flight noise. So we've got another problem there that we need to be looking at.
Thank you. And we will be asking some of those questions moving forward. Any other questions for
I just wanted to say, Doug, he was at our Tuesday council meeting, and so my voice is coming back, so that was a good thing that you didn't have my full strength of my voice on the council meeting, because I did bring up, and I want to bring it up, is that even in, I've lived in San Bruno my whole life, third generation, and I really am getting more of the issues of areas that in 10 years have not had the noise, but they're hearing the noise. This is not woe is Rico, but I live in the flight path, and I can tell you 2 a.m. last week, 4 a.m., 4 a.m. So that's just my personal experience. I have folks that have it much worse, sometimes measuring at 93. Learned that from the congressperson's office. So as I brought up, first of all, I want to appreciate that when I had said at the meeting, 1 million for 30 homes, and my concern was the money that is being invested, the 7.4 billion, was that for its residents, for the neighboring communities that have to endure and be a part of it. And the investment that we're putting in to the airport also should somehow gravitate outside its borders. And so that we continue this collaboration and continue on the homes. I will tell you that it's one thing, again, when you're trying to sleep at night, but in my community, I'll speak for myself, it has really elevated within the last year. And in the last, several months, I'm hearing from areas in our town, my city, that have not come forward before. And I've been on the council for a little bit. So I do appreciate some of those news about the 180 to 200 and the potential for going forward. And I just hope that the airport does take and hear for what the residents, not just in San Bruno, throughout this county and San Francisco County, and the need that it truly has. So I appreciate your investing in the future of SFO. I hope you'll do that the same with the neighboring communities and its residents.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Yeakel? Supervisor Pine.
I just wanted to follow up on the ground-based noise. Had the opportunity to talk to some of our residents about that today, and I know there's Ivor. Maybe this, excuse me, Doug. Maybe this is better for Ivor. But the airport, as I understand it, is in the process of negotiating for new noise detection systems. And can you give us an update on that?
Yeah, so we've got a RFP out for, to replace the vendor that supplies and maintains our noise monitoring equipment. We're in the process of selecting a new vendor for that. I'm hopeful that by the June meeting, we'll be able to report out on who that's going to be. Our selection is subject, number one, to the approval of our airport commission, so we need to seek their approval before we can truly award the contract, and also we need to ensure that any bid protests are addressed. But two things. Number one, I'm confident that we'll be able to report on who that's being awarded to in the June meeting, and then hopefully have that vendor make a presentation to the roundtable, if not in time for June, for the next roundtable meeting. So we'll keep you updated on that.
Having them present to us is really important.
Understood.
And have we asked in the RFP about their capabilities to measure the ground-based noise? In the past, we've been told that the technologies are, it's been difficult to measure ground-based noise. But I understand with technology changes, maybe there's more opportunity for that. Is that something we can expect from the new provider of the?
Reading Bert's body language, I would say that that was a no, but I think we can certainly query them about that when we have them present to the roundtable.
If I may, right now, the FAA's radar data feed to us changed in the last couple of years. We now get what's known as SWIM data versus ARTS data. Difference is it's more the digital river that the FAA has for us rather than the old standard radar feed. Based on that, we're able to get flights from start of takeoff roll on the runway versus 400 feet off the end of the runway. So we're able to correlate that a little bit better nowadays. And also, too, we're looking at new technology, which I mentioned before to this body, called ANEEM, which is a method of reversing the connection aircraft to an event. In the past, it's always been, I have an aircraft noise event. Were there any airplanes in the air that made that? Now we're going to say, okay, I have an airplane. How many monitors registered that event? So we'll be working it backwards. And right now, from early processing of that technology, it looks good. We're looking at some good numbers. So we should find that no matter who we get, using the new technology and the new data, we'll have better data.
So should I conclude that we will be able to track ground-based noise given these changes?
It depends on what you mean ground-based noise. If you mean aircraft on a runway departing, yes. If you mean aircraft rolling around on the ground, not so much.
If the vendor can speak to that when they come to our meeting, that would be very helpful.
That'd be great. Any other questions, comments for Mr. Yekel? None? Scott, thank you very much for your presentation, and we will move on to item number 8, and I will pass it to Justin.
Okay. I'm going to, I think this is the summary of the technical working group meeting.
This is the
correct?
summary of the technical working group.
Yes, on March 7th. So we were, Than from NorCal Tracon and Melissa from Fremont ATC talked about the pirate procedure. They provided a whole bunch of information about it, but it was published on February 28th. But there was an oversight in its publication. It's supposed to look like a tailored arrival with a crossing restriction at the pirate waypoint at or below 15,000 feet. It was included in the package, but not published with that. So NorCal Tracon had a problem with that since they vector a lot of traffic in that area. So although it was published, the aircraft weren't actually getting that procedure. So on April 25th, I want to make sure I get this right, it will be republished with that crossing restriction. So Than and Melissa presented that information to us, and we also discussed the work plan. James provided an overview to the members that were there and asked for their feedback, and we're currently working on it. So.
Excellent. Any questions for Justin regarding the working group? Any members of the public that wish to ask any questions or make any comments? Having none, then we will move on. Thank you, Justin, and we will move on to the ground-based ad hoc subcommittee. And you know what? I'm going to let Justin do this one again.
Let me do it? Sure. I did a lot of talking for that conference call. So HMMH reviewed 5 studies in the past, and those studies actually are going to be published on the website. I think James is working on that, and I got it to him today. So we discussed a lot of information. Hopefully it was relatively clear. Obviously, it focused on ground-based noise, how it's generated, how it propagates, and how it can be mitigated. Discussed how, as aircraft depart, there's really 2 noise peaks that occur. We talked about how treating vibration and rattle seem to be the most important aspects and conclusions of these studies, and a high priority in terms of mitigation. There has been sound insulation that treatments that have been done for ground-based noise, some of which involved even more substantial measures than a typical sound insulation program, such as double stud walls and various things of that nature that are, not typically used, like window treatments and door treatments. So that was part of the discussion. We also discussed possible equipment and measuring tools available, and how this technology could be used to integrate into the airport's existing NOM system. It's a little bit different. Obviously, in ground-based noise, you're looking at typically C-weighted frequencies instead of A-weighted because of the low frequency. You're looking at it in more detail, perhaps. So you're typically looking at 1 second data, which is really robust. And so it's a little bit different. The equipment utilized in a new system, I won't speak for whatever vendor is selected, but they should be able to discuss what capabilities their equipment has that could be utilized. And we also talked about other potential mitigation, a little bit about barriers and the complexity there with a barrier, and how you would have to have it really close to a receiver. It would have to be really high. We're talking like 15 feet within 50 to 100 feet of the residence to be even, you know, a little bit of potential benefit. And this is all based on the research that was done. And we discussed as possible active noise canceling. And for those of you that might not be aware of that, it's basically emitting noise at different frequencies to effectively cancel or reduce the noise at those particular frequencies. So that's something, a research area that looked promising in these studies, but they all said that this needs to be further advanced in that area. And I think that's about it.
And would you like to give us, Ann Schneider.
I would only add that, so we did talk about these things. We were working from the work plan that identified the types of ground-based noise and what we might do. We also talked about trying to find other airports around the world that might be dealing with this right now. We did talk about studying, or the need to study very peripherally, the health impacts from this different type of noise. So that was there. And there was a gentleman, and he's not here tonight, but he's from, I believe, Palo Alto, and we live in an area full of technology, people with great technological skills, and he's familiar with some professors at Stanford who may have other measuring devices that could pick up the kinds of issues that we're trying to deal with. So I think we might be pushing anyway outside of this area to see what other assistance. But again, pretty much trying to find partnering airports, partnering groups, the health impacts, and better ways to measure the issues.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And let me throw one more thing in there. I want to thank Bert. He tracked down an EIR that I referenced earlier today, where the airport received a declaration of no significant environmental impacts for a bunch of activities that happened at the ground at the airport, mainly putting in safety precautions, the EMS systems, which moved the runways closer to both Millbrae and Burlingame. And that's when I started noticing, once that work was completed around 2016, and it gets confused in with the whole next gen happening at the same time. But Bert, I talked to James afterwards. We're going to try to get all of the studies, all of the information that we find up onto the website so that everyone can find it. I'm about halfway through the EIR.
Right.
So I've got a little bit more homework to do on that in terms of what was studied. And it's complicated because this is a complicated area with lots of jurisdictions and lots of airplanes taking off. But for those of us who find environmental stuff fun, it's great reading.
And thank you, Ms. Schneider, and thank you for stepping in for me. I was not able to make that last meeting, so I appreciate that. Justin, you had some follow-up?
Yeah, Ann did a great job, so thank you, Ann, for being there. I do want to make mention, Bert had some interesting news in Seattle, actually. Seattle is actually looking at ground-based noise. I think they're just starting to discuss that. Bert, is there anything else you want to talk about on that?
I was contacted by Vince Mestry, a noted consultant within the acoustic field. He said, I know that you're doing a ground-based noise study with your roundtable. Wanted to know what your scope of work looked like, because we're just kicking ours off right now. So I sent it to him for you. And he says, oh, wow, it looks like you're slightly ahead of us, but we're in lockstep. So definitely want to keep in touch with you, and we'll exchange information.
Excellent, that's great news. And I think we are kind of trailblazing right here with this study, and I think we need to push forward. Any member have any other comment? Or I do have a member of the public who wishes to speak on this item. So with that, I will ask Peggy McLaughlin to please step up.
Good evening, Peggy McLaughlin. Thank you all for having the ad hoc subcommittee. We really appreciate it because the ground-based noise is a significant concern for many citizens. I have participated in as many meetings as I could. I'd like to ask what the next steps are. We've had a couple of meetings now where Bert presented a lot of information, which I'm waiting to see on the website. And then Justin and team presented a lot of information. So what's the next steps in terms of who's going to synthesize all this information and come up with proposals as to how we can address and come up with potential mitigations?
Okay, thank you very much, Peggy, and you have been involved in this and appreciate your support and asking questions. As far as, we've collected a lot of data. We're trying to get somebody, now, again, we're not experts, so we're gonna try to get somebody to analyze it, so, and then make heads or tails of it. So I will pass it on to James, some ideas for next steps.
Sure, and I'll just I just pulled up our scope of work that we developed back in January and had this roundtable approve it and stuff. And I think kind of the rough draft of what we're looking at in the next couple of meetings is start wrapping up some of these findings that we're looking at and then start rolling into recommendations, ways for the roundtable to consider looking forward. Does that mean additional studies? Kind of really narrowing down, if we are asking for studies, what exactly we're studying. So making sure we're not repeating a lot of the stuff that's already been done, certainly leveraging a lot of the research that's already been worked on. So I think there are, I think, 2 meetings, 3 if necessary, but I think the next couple of meetings we're going to primarily focus on really drilling down on what recommendations that the roundtable can move forward and what kind of studies that those look at, as well as what kind of meaningful mitigations we can take in short term and also in long term.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Peggy? Well, it's going to be the subcommittee's work. So when we get together, we will have an outline of what we're going to talk about and at those meetings. So I invite you to please, the next few meetings are going to be very important. So I would love to have your input in there. So Ann, please.
If I can just add, I think one of the things that we talked about just at the end of the meeting 2 weeks ago was the data. We don't have the right devices to collect the data. We don't know if the devices are in the right place. We have unique topography here where we would differ with Seattle. And because of the way this type of sound moves, I think that's one of the recommendations we're going to be is where do we put what devices, where do we put them, and then see what we're finding. And I remember for all the new people on the roundtable, when I first came on 4 years ago, there were some really great graphics that showed where sound moved and how sound moved, but it was in-flight noise. So I would love to see graphics that show the way ground-based noise, the low frequency, high vibration moves, because it moves in a different way. So there's some visuals that can help all of us who will look that way. So that's at least what I'll be asking for through that process. And
Right.
we meet again in April?
Probably be early
May.
Early May.
Early
So,
May.
and if I could just summarize something that I think Supervisor Pine had asked Bert in regards to the equipment. I think one of the conversations that we also had at this meeting was how do we, what's a way that we could capture data simplicity? Like, so while the noise monitors that are currently being contracted for may not necessarily capture data, Bert was explaining that there are different ways that maybe we can find more meaningful data to capture with the existing equipment or the newer equipment that may not necessitate the additional studies, additional equipment costs. So those are some of the things that he was elaborating when he talks about the swim data and those other things that we can certainly leverage to have a more meaningful collection of data to work with.
And to thank the airport in that. I periodically, in the 4 years that I've been on here, send out some noise reports, and I generally never hear back because we learned that the low frequency noise didn't immediately match up with an air flight. Well, I did one on March 10th and the 11th, so it started around 10 o'clock at night until when I finally got to sleep around 2 o'clock in the morning. And the airport got back to me and they were able to track each flight, each airline, each type of flight. And this is the first time that I've seen this. So it may, for all the people who think we're not making starts, to me, this is a big first move. We'll be able to find these things, figure out the airplanes. And I believe Bert said tonight that Air China, another thing that they did that was something we should celebrate is that they're trying to keep their flights more in the evening or in the day as opposed to night. So there could be some carrots and sticks carrots that we can offer along this, but at least we're beginning to better match complaints to data. Otherwise, a lot of, I believe, the ground-based noise complaints that our communities might have made weren't logged. They couldn't track an airplane to it, but now they can.
Great, thank you. So any other comments, questions for Justin? Or so we will move on to members of the public. Anybody questions on the ground-based noise? Any further questions or comments? And if not, then we will move on to item number 10, which is the upcoming Noise 101, and James, sell us.
Sure. So, so I've contacted most of the new members and tried to coordinate as best as I can a date, and I apologize that it is during the workday. There is just a lot to balance out with such a diverse group and availability. So I have heard a lot of interest for different dates and times that if we were to offer something later on this year, that I'll certainly be in touch with you. So we do have, I believe, 11 from this group either confirmed, said they were available. So that's actually a really good turnout. We're really excited about that. So if there's anybody else who's either a new member or existing member who wants to get a refresher, it's going to be on Tuesday, April 9th. And what it's going to involve is you'll get a tower tour. So we'll take you up to the tower in SFO and kind of give you just to kind of get to observe what happens up at the tower. We'll do a couple of hours of instructional time with lunch, and then there'll be a field tour. So basically get a tour of the airfield and kind of get a little up-close view of taxiways, the aircraft, hangars, and really get to see a lot of the different elements in and around the airport. So, and that's, again, Tuesday, April 9th, 9:30 to 2:30 is what I believe.
And what is the latest date to sign up? Yesterday?
Yesterday. We still have room, but you would need to let us know ASAP because we need to get your name, because we do need to submit that
Deadline
to facilities.
tomorrow, end of business?
Yeah.
Tomorrow, end of business, so. Okay, so members, for those who were asking questions, and this is a way to get information about the roundtable and learn a few acronyms. So
Yeah.
I encourage everybody to sign up. Again, tomorrow, end of business. Please let James know. Thank you, James. And with that, I move back to Justin for item number 11, aviation news and updates, and aviation noise news and updates.
Just two quick updates, actually. One is that the San Fernando Valley might actually start a roundtable with concerns regarding Burbank and Van Nuys Airport. There's a lot of discussion going on right there. So the roundtable might be formed, or it's been requested, I believe. And also, in regards to ground-based noise, HMMH has submitted a problem statement to the Airport Cooperative Research Program, ACRP, suggesting a research project that would involve noise cancellation of things such as ground-based noise. It would involve, I believe it was over a 12 to 15 month period, a recommended budget of $500,000. It would involve doing measurements or a testing of it. I know Bert has been engaged on this and we got his opinion on it, and his support in terms of possibly using SFO as a test if the project was to proceed. It has to be reviewed and approved for funding, and it would go out to a formal RFP process in which vendors could, consultants or vendors could bid on doing the research. So we think it's really important that more research is done, especially with updated technologies and equipment that could be utilized. And so I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention because we're talking about it quite a bit. Yeah, fingers crossed. So.
Thank you, Justin. And then now I'm going back up to the members. Is there any member communications or announcements? Everybody wants to go home. So having said that, I'm not sure, do I need to move to adjourn? So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here tonight.
I'm just learning about this. Me too. I actually have a meeting next week with the residents.
So I keep telling them.